With most games, when I buy them, I don't play them in months, or I don't even buy them for months, since I prefer to sit back and wait for all the good mods to be made. This is especially the case for Bethesda, Elder Scrolls and Fallout games, where I often prefer to wait half a year or a year before buying them, so the modding communities can do their work. And recently I decided that now was a good time to start playing Fallout 4. So I took a day or two to browse through the Nexus Mod Manager to collect some mods together, and then took a brief view at the Bethesda mod platform, which supposedly exists to make mods available for degenerate console peasant filth. The mods uploaded to the Bethesda modding platform are pathetic, and it's pretty obvious that most within the modding community don't really care much about making the work available for console peasants. And as I browsed through the mods available, I found a anti-phobia mod set, which, if you happen to have some sort of phobia of polygon spiders, scorpions or shellfish mutation variants, remove those enemy types from the game and replace them with mole rats and other low-tier enemies that will be easier to defeat whilst not upsetting you and conveniently also making the game easier for you. Basically a cheap mod disguised as an attempt to make the post-apocalyptic wasteland a safe space. I much rather advise you to consider using the Harambe companion mod instead. But anyway, let's talk about other topics and random things that caught my attention this week, and which I will be summarizing here to hopefully create a weekly format for the future. Emojis for Muslims. You might remember previous diversity emoji disasters in which laughable campaigns were started for inclusivity. And here we now have the hijab emoji campaign, started by some 15-year-old Muslim to, well, feel more included on the internet. The daughter of the Saudi cultural attaché for the Saudi Arabian embassy to Germany in Berlin believes that her religion is more than prayer, and that she has been wearing the hijab since she was 13, so it is part of her Muslim identity to show it to the world. This is what they're going to look like. And no, I don't understand why the guy is there, even though this is supposed to be about women. Wasn't the thing about this yellow smiley supposed to be its universality, meaning that nobody could really 100% claim that this only represented one group? Well, anyway, I'm pretty sure that her fellow Saudi citizens who have to wear a niqab or face being flogged or beheaded will be very happy to know that they can now show and express that status through an emoji. And I am also pretty sure that this newfound inclusivity will prevent many a potential suicide bomber who will now, through the power of the emoji, no longer consider themselves to be outsiders. This here is one of those stories where you just have to sit back and think to yourself, you can't make this shit up. Pakistani migrants throughout Germany were called by people claiming to be members of the Pakistani diplomatic staff in Germany, who told them that they were about to be deported from Germany back to Pakistan, and that the diplomatic staff could prevent that deportation for a fee ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 euros. Apparently several Pakistani immigrants fell victims to this scam, and it was only revealed when they tried to scam a Pakistani immigrant who had been living in Germany for over 30 years. And here's the spicy part of this story. The scammers were actual Pakistani embassy staff and members of the Pakistani diplomatic mission to Germany. The Pakistani embassy was forced into making a public statement admitting that members of its staff were running a scam, that Pakistanis receiving calls from the embassy should take those calls not serious if they are about immigration or visa matters, and pretty much admitted that they had to get the German authorities involved since they were apparently too incompetent to sort this shit out themselves. Nothing coming out of Pakistan would surprise me at this point, and the fact that members of its diplomatic staff in foreign embassies would seize the migrant and refugee crisis as an opportunity to milk money out of migrants and refugees just adds to the long list of things that makes Pakistan a dumpster fire. Aren't diplomats usually wealthy people and have a job where they represent the state and are therefore obliged to be at their best behavior? If this is the best behavior of the Pakistani state, I guess you can all imagine what things look like back in Pakistan. And next we are going to talk about two things relating to the AfD, the new right-wing political party in Germany that has been having a lot of success, in case you have been living under a rock. The AfD in the state of Hesse decided that in the event of a future terrorist attack, or attacks, they will react to those attacks by pinning up posters throughout the state with the caption, "Thank you, Merkel." A proposal which rustled a few jimmies in the state of Hesse and beyond, with the Conservatives stating that this is pandering to a brown political soup and shows that the AfD wants attacks to happen. The Social Democrats claiming that through this the AfD shows its unwillingness to participate in finding actual solutions to the current problems. I find the latter to be the most laughable statement, since, and let's be honest here, besides the Bavarian CSU, nobody is even talking about the problem, let alone proposing any kind of solutions. And the AfD has a point, especially when you keep in mind how terrorists in Germany have been arrested only last week who claimed to be refugees and came to the country claiming to be refugees, that the attacks in Germany were carried out by people who came as refugees, and that the Paris attacks and the Brussels attacks were carried out by people who came as refugees. All of that was made possible because of one person's policy decision. And even though an action like that proposed is somewhat cynical, it doesn't in any way prove that those carrying it out want terrorist attacks to happen. Quite the opposite, in fact. Actions like these, as well as the very rise of the AfD itself, are the result of the political apathy and lack of will to find any solutions to this problem. Let's get to the second subject relating to the AfD, where I finally get the chance to voice some criticism. Olivia Jones is a German drag queen, entertainer and comedian, and she decided to file a police report for Volksverhetzung, which is inciting the public against a AfD politician for equating homosexuality with pedophilia. Subject of the matter is a Facebook post by said politician, which, as far as I read it, is somewhat of that, well, the gays are coming for your children garbage. I haven't seen the equation of homosexuality with pedophilia, so the title, I guess, could be rather misleading. Do you remember the days when evangelical Christians used to make the same gibberish arguments and people simply argued with them? What happened to those days? I honestly find the fact that this has to be settled with our shitty hate speech laws rather than with debate really annoying. But yeah, I can't condone this kind of nonsense where people complain that there's some gay conspiracy and that the faggots are out there to hunt down your children and teach them faggotry. The AfD is a right-wing party, and as such, statements like these are pretty much unsurprising from such a political wing. And I am sure that we will be hearing a lot more similar statements with social conservative and right-wing views being expressed. And it is irrelevant that a majority of the German public is tolerant towards the gay community, because fundamentally the AfD has so far been mostly a single-issue party, which has been the formula to its success. I really resent the fact personally that right now it is this party which is the only party that is openly talking about the Islamic immigration problem and actually providing the criticism needed. But I can't complain, and neither can anyone else. The simple fact is that as long as the political mainstream, as long as the conservatives, as long as the liberals, as long as the left refuse to address the Islamic migration issue and the problems that come along with it, we will have to deal with the AfD. And we will have to watch them become more and more and more popular, no matter with how many of their other policy proposals we disagree with. If we want to combat the AfD's popularity, we need to start addressing the Islamic immigrant issue. And the final thing I will be talking about from the last week is a violent incident that occurred in Bautzen, where a group of right-wing activists gathered close to a refugee home and were assaulted by a group of refugees who had gathered and organized their assault on this group. Witnesses state that the violence was started by the refugee group, but then escalated to up to 100 people in a mass brawl with bottles and stones being thrown around. The police intervened and escorted the refugees back to their home, where they had to remain whilst being guarded by a heavy police presence. After this incident, demands were made for better caretaking at refugee homes. The police unions demanded a stricter approach towards criminal refugees, and the family minister wants more crime prevention measures. In the end, I have to say that I stand with the police union. The estimated costs of this entire mess throughout Germany is already estimated to be more than 50 billion euros, and the simple fact is that the money to do all of this is hardly there anymore. And I also think that this is something that was bound to happen at one point. The temperaments within society are rising, especially on the fringes, and as such it doesn't surprise me that the far-right groups would feel encouraged to do more provocative things, more open, more out in the open. And neither am I surprised that after what we had seen in the past months, that some of the new arrivals would engage in mass brawls. This will sound cynical to some, but with terrorist attacks being expected by pretty much everyone and the increase in sexual assaults, mass brawls are some of my least concerns and are an indicator on where the social pulse is. I think we will be seeing more of these mass brawl incidents and possibly even riots in the future, and the reason for why they will happen is the fact that no measures were taken to prevent them in the first place, to address the useless gibberish by the family minister. The preventative measure would have been a migration policy that didn't overstrain social services and would have resulted in something that would have been more manageable.